Hello everyone. Another day in the fish room here. Thanks for tuning in. Trying to get a good shot of one of the hill stream loaches. This is Gastromyzon Bloody Mary, one of them. I just love how they get around and forage all the time. In this tank in particular, you're gonna see all over the side of the glass, I have these little white worms. No planaria, thankfully, or at least none that I see, but I'm pretty sure these Gastromyzon, and I also have some of the, I'm gonna forget the actual name, but I have some of the reticulated hill streams in here too. I'm pretty sure they're sustaining themselves quite well on the worms in here. But this is just kind of a little bit of a rare view. A lot of times when you see them like this, which is also cool. But you just get them stuck to the glass, which is kind of one of my favorite things to come down and see. But they also have some really great patterning, so it's cool to see them like this. In other news, I was gonna do this at a different order, but we have a visitor. So this is one of my yo-yo loaches. For anyone keeping track at home, my yo-yo loaches usually live in my 75-gallon aquarium. I have a group of 6 of them, and I've had them for a while. This guy has always been the smallest, or gal, I'm really not sure, but she's always been the smallest, and you can tell recently she's kind of been through the ringer. I came down, actually it was my wife that came down the other day and saw that I think it had been beat up or tried to be eaten. As far as I could tell, its mouth was pretty bloody and its tail was pretty shredded, and I just, I don't have a lot of aggression in my other, like in my group of loaches, I should say, but I do have a pretty big catfish in there, and I do have a pretty big frontosa in there. I don't usually see them do anything predatory. I mean, obviously if a fish fits in their mouth, they'll give it a shot, but they've just been in there for months with no issues. Well, came down, this fish was clearly struggling, and so we took it out and put him in here into my hill stream loach, I'll call it, for recovery, and that little loach has just been doing fantastic. We did have it in QT for about a week, so I pulled it from the 75 gallons straight into QT, gave it just a little bit of a recoup with some light salt dosing, because it was, as far as I could tell, just some wounds that needed to be recovered from. So I didn't do anything drastic with meds, just kind of gave him some time out and treated with salt lightly. And then once the wounds had kind of cleared, I put him into this 20-gallon long. Just reorienting for a better shot for y'all here while I'm yapping. But anyway, since we've had him into this 20-gallon long, the yo-yo loach that is, been recovering, I think I'm just going to keep it in here until he starts putting some weight on, until those fins start looking 100%, and then we can give him another shot back with the group of loaches after that. But just another part of the process in managing the fish health in your room. You can see he likes to hang out there back in the heater and give you a scare, but that's what loaches do. They just kind of take naps and look like they may have passed away. So that's this tank. I do have one other update in terms of fish. I'll call it fish health news. This is another little temporary setup that I've had just recently. So this is one of my little axolotl tetras, or rasboras, sorry. And let me tell you what, since I moved this display tank up here, sorry to make everyone dizzy. Yeah, this is the continuing struggle in the fish room. As you can see, water clarity is just not something that I ever struggle with. All my tanks are just not cloudy. This one I have struggled with for the better part of what feels like 4 to 6 months. It always tests fine. I have not had fish deaths. All of my inhabitants are the usual in here. This is where I keep my male guppies, which is kind of a shame because the cloudiness really kind of takes away from how good they look. But as I feel like I've kind of gotten really stubborn with this tank because I just don't want to give it up. I want to try to see how long it's willing to stay cloudy, see if I can figure it out. Water changes don't seem to make a difference. This is by far my oldest aqua soiled tank, and I thought maybe capping it with sand would help. I've used this same sand in 2 other aquariums that have no clarity of water issues, so I don't think it's the sand. Anyway, unless this tank starts to test way off with parameters or my plants start dying, crazy things like that, I have no plans to break it down. I'm just gonna kind of let it be a living experiment in the fish room until it bothers me enough to actually redo everything, which I'm not a huge fan of doing. But anyway, the thing I have been struggling with is I've been losing axolotls, I would say, within the last week. I don't think they handled the extra sediment in the water as well as the other fish. So I've got embers in here, ember tetras that have been longtime residents that don't seem to be bothered. Obviously the guppies are doing fine. I haven't found any of them with issues, but my axolotls I've been dealing with, like the one down in that QT, some kind of bacteria or fin rot that doesn't seem to be impacting any other fish. So I pulled that one out. He was the only one that was struggling, and he's still alive and eating. I'm just gonna keep him in there until I can kind of see if his tail's gonna grow back. But again, that's kind of just one of the details of when you have this many tanks in a room that I understand it's just one little tiny fish in a room of hundreds of fish, but clearly there was something going on there. And so having the ability to be able to just pull him out, set him up in a little tiny specimen container with aeration, and that way you can individually feed him and monitor. Like right now, again, my go-to is just really light salt treatments to see if I can get that as an initial response, because I'm not seeing fungus, I'm not seeing bacterial growth, I'm not seeing wounds, I'm not seeing the fish get picked on by the guppies. I mean, they're too busy chasing each other. So again, this is a new problem for me, but open to suggestions, especially on the cloudy water, if anyone's dealt with persistent cloudy water in an aqua soil setup. That setup, I would say the soil's about 3 years old. Okay, in other news, I finally have made some progress with my lower 10-gallon rack here. I've got a couple of female guppies that I'm just waiting on dumping their fry in this aquarium. Again, this is a strain I'm trying to keep. It's albino. These are the males, albino Dumbo. Kind of like super red, you can see them. I love their color. I have them kind of under a really red light right now because the timers aren't on, but those are the boys. That one, especially without the pink face in the back there, that's the one sort of true albino that I have left. The other ones are kind of an albino koi that I'm gonna capture. So all of these females in here, I'm pretty sure are carrying, or I should say have fry, and they should be dropping them pretty soon. So I'm waiting on that to happen. That's the update in guppy news. And then I should have a good selection of albino fry to pick from. Down here, I'm finally working on, there's not much to see in here, other than I finally got around to moving some of my yellow shrimp to their 10-gallon long-term colony home. So I've got yellow shrimp in here. Down in here, I've got the orange shrimp that are finally really starting to take off. and also a ton of snails. Got a ton of snails in here that I gotta, that's kind of the next phase of the fish room, snail control. But got orange in there, got blues in here. Blues are doing really good. And then down in here, I've got red, all Neocaridina. So that's the idea. Now, long term, the next big project that I have is to get this air pump out of here. Sorry, right here. This is an air pump that I need to move above this rack up there, set up correctly so that picture will be moving. And then I should have, with the gaps here, I should recover enough space to where I can add a fifth 10-gallon rack. And then the idea is this is going to be my sort of egg scattering conveyor belt. So the first fish that I have earmarked to go in here would be the longfin mountain cloud minnows up here, which again, I've got to be the first guy in history who's ever struggled to make mountain cloud minnow babies, but I got 3 for the whole summer. That was how many fry I managed to create out of all of those. So I'm going to try some winter breeding, and basically what I'm going to do is have these tanks set up with shrimp only, to where they'll spend about a week in here, fatten them up, next week move them in here, this tank will be empty, fatten them up, week later, move them down here, and so on and so forth until I have, you know, about over the course of a month, I've moved them across the whole rack. Now, the hope is, by doing that and leaving the tank empty, other than Neocaridina shrimp, you'll just start to have fry that will pop up, you know, from one tank to another after you've moved them, or at least that's the theory anyway. I've got some snail control that I need to do before that's gonna work, because I'm really kind of weary of them eating all of the eggs. But apart from that, this whole sort of conveyor system is close to being ready. I just need to move this air pump. So I'll probably have a video update once I get that done. But if you have not ventured into the land of battery backup air pumps, these hygger ones, man, they are like tanks. I think they're actually used maybe for outdoor ponds, but I've got 2 of them running pretty much everything in this fish room. So pretty good bargain. Okay, in other news, I have some other updates. Hang on here. Okay, so I finally got my stir-by Corridoras aquarium through medication. They're through meds. That nasty bacterial issue that about 3 of them came down with seems to have passed. As you can see, the ones that I have left in here, I can barely even get a good video of for you because they are just all over the place. And so I'm left with 5 of these little guys. They're not, you know, I call them all kind of adolescent. They're not full grown, not of breeding age, I wouldn't say yet. But what I'm excited about with this tank is I finally got it to where it is no guppies, just as you can see, hopefully kind of an oasis for Corridora breeding. And my goal now, without any competition, you know, I know people talk a lot about how do I make sure my Corys are getting enough food in a community tank, and that can really be a challenge, which is one of the biggest reasons I'm just happy to have them in their own aquarium so that you can overfeed them without overfeeding the aquarium itself. For 5 Corys, this is a 20-gallon long, so definitely big enough, but when you're dealing with trying to get food down to them through a bunch of guppies or whatever may be above them, it can easily turn into like an overfeeding type situation. So now that it's just the stir-bys in there, I haven't even been able to really sex them and make sure I have males and females still. I'm just kind of hoping and waiting for them to grow out. It looks good. I think I have at least 2 or 3 of them in there that look like females, and then maybe a couple males. So maybe not the best sort of distribution, but it's the group that I have left of the 8 that I bought, and I'm just kind of happy that the majority of them were able to survive whatever that sort of bacterial thing happened. The Maricin worked perfectly and didn't lose any of them from that treatment. So with hindsight, honestly, probably should have treated them all from day 1 and wouldn't have lost any. But it's also something that I don't try to do and shove a lot of meds down fish unnecessarily. So that's the update on the stir-by tank. I'm hoping with some heavy feeding and just a tank by themselves, I can start finding some eggs in here relatively soon and have an update for y'all on that. Well, I've saved hopefully the best for last. This is the new 40-gallon breeder. And it's been set up for about a week now. I have it installed as part of the new rack system that you can see the initial update on in the previous Fishroom Update video, if you're interested. The reason I'm showing it now is because I just wanted to give an update on how I'm doing the process and what the idea behind this tank is. So, despite my earlier struggle with plants in my other tank set up in a similar way, I have this tank with a layered substrate, you can kind of see. So the bottom is nothing but aqua soil, and then I kind of have a layer of sand, and then on top I went with a mixed layer of gravel and sand. Now, my plans for this tank require it to be very well seasoned. You can see I'm floating an intake sponge from one of my other aquariums. That's just for beneficial bacteria. I'm sure many of you already know that. I've got just the slightest bit of biofilm starting to grow on the bottom of the wood there. You can see, so that's a good sign. The rock is kind of there just to help weigh it down. And I've got minimal hardscape. I'm running twin air sponge filters, and that's kind of my long-term plan for this tank. I think it's more than enough. What I want to start with doing is really getting plants to thrive. And now that I've tried a variety of different plants, I kind of have a really good idea of what works in my water, tap water, and what doesn't. So I think I'm just going to go with majority of cryptocorin. I tend to have really good luck with that, although it's really slow growing, it's low maintenance, and once I get my tanks stable, I've had crypt do really, really well over the long haul. So my plan for this tank is just to put a ton of crypt of every different kind that I can get my hands on, and just kind of layer it so that the bigger ones are in the back and it's more sparse in the front. And the idea is I want this to be the home of kind of, for me anyway, what will be the centerpiece fish of my fish room. And I really am excited to get a colony of Amazon spotted puffers for this tank, a 40-gallon. I haven't quite decided yet. I think I want more than one, and I think I can pull off more than one in a 40-gallon breeder with the right setup. What I mean by that is, and I'll have a video coming out on this if you're interested, specifically about how I set up my tank for pea puffers, because I feel like it's very simple and it solves a lot of the issues that people run into when they get pea puffers for the first time. So I'm going to take the similar approach for the spotted Amazon puffers, in that I want this tank to be a true ecosystem before I let them have access to it. So that means I need cultures of live food for them to be thriving in here and reproducing, so that I don't have to feed them by hand all the time. And I really think with pufferfish especially, it provides a layer of enrichment that just prevents a lot of the behavioral issues that people run into. So that's kind of this in a nutshell. I will say, backing this up a little bit, plan ahead when you buy a rack, because this almost didn't work out. These dimensions are literally the exact footprint of a 40-gallon breeder, and what I found out is with these rails over here, you can't slide it in from the front, you can't slide it in from the side. And so the only reason this worked out still after I bought this really expensive rack is because you can build it from the bottom up. And so I literally had to, with the help of my lovely wife, by the way, who humors me, we had to pull this off by putting the 40-gallon breeder in from above and lowering it in very carefully to this level and then building the rack on top. So where I had planned to be able to have 40-gallon breeders on all 3 levels, I'm really only going to be able to have 40-gallon breeder on middle and top, and then I think I'll have to stick with a 20-gallon long or something like that for the bottom, which is what I have. So just a couple things on this new tank and setup. I've got a different kind of light than I've ever had on a planted tank, and this is called an F-zone light. You can buy them on Amazon, and initially, as far as a budget planted light goes, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed. Now, obviously, I need to wait and tell you all my final impressions when I have plants in there, but on paper, it's really good. It comes with a really great app, and I love all of the functionality that it has in terms of you can control the exact percentages of reds and blues and greens and whites, and I've never had that in any of my other budget planted aquarium lights. So I am all about bargain lights. I do not have an expensive light in the whole fish room, I don't think, which maybe I need to fix that. But that's just kind of initial impressions on how I've got that set up. I do, as you can see, have a massive hygger heater. I've got an individual review video coming up on that, and that'll be a different pull-out video if you're interested in hearing my impressions on that. But that'll be the heater for that aquarium, for this aquarium, and definitely I'll keep y'all updated as things progress. All right, so I know this can kind of be probably a weird place to end a fish room update video, but for any I guess super fish room nerd, you will understand. This is what I fondly refer to in the fish room as the water closet. And oh, hang on, I got some dog problems. I apologize for the interruption, but back to the water closet. This is where I typically store, and I guess you would say maybe stage the water for the fish room when I have to do water changes. It's pretty simple setup. I fill it with tap water that I pump in, and then when I do fish changes, when I do water changes in the fish aquariums, I have pumps that run to various hoses to different aquariums, and that way I don't have to lift buckets, and I don't really do that much work. That being said, it is not very automated. And I had sort of teased in a prior video that I was going to be upgrading to an RO system, and I have gone with a bulk reef supply RO system, and I'll have obviously videos coming out on where I'm going to install that. Right now, I'm kind of thinking that the best spot to install it would be in the closet. Right above my 55-gallon Rubbermaid trash can. So this is 55-gallon water storage. I'm going to fill it to about 50 gallons. That's what I think would be about enough for my whole fish room. But the idea behind it is, especially in the winter, and you can kind of see I've got a heater sitting here. Really, if I want to be on the safe side, just depending on which aquarium I'm doing, I'm not. But if I want to be on the safe side, I really do need to drop that heater in and heat this water to, at least above 68 degrees. Especially out of the tap in the winter, it comes out real cold. It can come out close to 60 degrees if it's really cold. So what I've planned is, I've kind of run, you can see electricity to my water closet. And the idea behind that is then I will be able to put the RO unit in the closet. I'll be able to run the line directly into the trash can with a float valve. Okay, kind of see where this is going, right? And it will automatically start to fill the water. once that float valve is triggered. And I also am planning on using some timers so that the RO unit is not running constantly. So it's kind of like a double layer protection of setting the runtime for the RO unit, but then also having that float valve to turn it off when it reaches about 50 gallons. That way, you know, I'd be able to have more of a permanent fixture of a water storage system in my fish room, which is going to be really big. that handles the input. I think for the output, that is something I'm still wrapping my head around, because for right now, it's really been nice to be able to drop in and drop out those power heads rather than having something permanently installed in the trash can, which is another option. So for right now, I think I'm just going to be dealing with how do I get the RO water into the trash storage unit, into the water storage unit in an automated way. And then, you know, I'll still obviously be the one to come in here and pull the water out of the aquariums and put the, you know, new water in. But at least then that alleviates the 1/3 step that I'm having to do right now, which is refill the, you know, water storage unit after I'm done with all the water changes. So with that, I have like, it's a pretty hefty one. I have like a 600 gallon per hour pump that I'm using, and it still takes me, I don't know, probably 20 minutes to fill this trash can all the way up, maybe a little bit more than that. And, you know, having to be paranoid about the water running over, you don't let yourself get distracted or anything like that. So that's like a solid 25 minutes where I'm really limited in what I can get done, and I'm really just having to watch that water refill. So anyway, that's a long-winded, hopefully not too drab update on how I stage and how I'm planning to update how I stage my water for my fish room. And then the idea, hopefully, is the majority of the tanks in my room, which I'm sorry the lights are off except for the 40 gallon just for the video. But the majority of my tanks, I don't tend to have to do a lot of water changes in because they have so much plants. And so I end up having, you know, for my 2 guppy tanks, the female guppy tank and the male guppy tank, those are the ones that I do water changes frequently by hand. And then all the other tanks a lot of times function off of top-offs alone. So I don't even think that I'd be using that much water in terms of, you know, how much RO water I need to be able to produce at one time. Anyway, that's the, you know, long version of the fish room update. I don't have a lot else to show you, so I will just go to the closing. I figured it would be fun to close on my yellow Neocaridina nursery tank. You can just barely make out one of the babies on the wall here. And that's why I'll say, like many, there's another one here, like many shrimp keepers, I'll say don't keep your tanks too clean. You'd be surprised how much it helps your baby shrimp grow. You can see one of the big ones on the, there we go, on the filter there too. But like I said, I'm going to close this video out. Keep an eye out if you're interested in the review video for the hygger heater that I got. And then I also have a video that I'm pretty excited about doing. I'm working on editing a longer, it's like 10-15 minutes, somewhere around there, about the pea puffers that I have going. So hopefully this video, like I said, is enjoyable. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you and your fish are doing well. We'll see you next time.